Hello, everyone, and welcome to Canadians with Disabilities and Their Allies. My name is Brent Frain. I'm the host. The show is also known as PWD Allies Podcast. Check it out on Spotify or your app store on the iPhone or any other source that you find that's good for you to check it out when you're on the go. Today is the Disability Stories. It's the health episode, and it's number 3. And today I am really glad and really proud to have my friend John joining me on the show. John's going to be talking about his perspective from a student's point of view on what he's hearing, what he's learning, maybe throughout his studies on health, basically the impacts it's having for persons with disabilities from an ally's point of view.
And you're looking very studious today, I have to say, with all the books behind your head there.
Yes, lots to read.
Just some light reading material from this morning. You know, nothing too big.
Nothing too big. Yeah.
No, lots to choose from.
Yeah.
So how you doing, John? Welcome to the show. Great
good.
having you.
Yeah, glad I was able to make it, and I know been planning this a while, and glad it worked out on one of my independent study days. So here we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We'll dive right in. So John, with your studies, maybe you could tell the listeners like what's happening with that.
Like what I'm doing. So obviously we're working
how far along are you, or basically, yeah.
I'm just about at the halfway point. So the registered nurse program is 4 years. There had been a period of time where you could do a fast track accelerated program, but I still wouldn't entertain that idea to this day, just because you end up getting, let's just say you start in September, you would do September semester and then January. And then you would have the summer off from, say April to September. But then after that, you're doing 2 full years. So you're going right through the summers for 2 years. So I know that's worked. It's worked well for a lot of friends of mine that chose that path. But at the same point, I imagine, how could you not be burned out by the end? So you need that time to relax and kind of catch your breath. But if I think when you actually calculate the math, you end up finishing the program about 8 months quicker than someone in the 4-year program. So, yes, it is technically 1 year faster, but really,
I'd rather have the 8 months.
Yeah.
You
need that break. And this, as you can imagine, it's a grueling program. It tests just about every nerve in your body going through it, which I guess is important because we're learning about all those aspects. But
hip bones connected to the leg bone.
Yeah. Yes.
So definitely, I found you need your break in between. So.
Yeah, indeed. It's a heavy course load, right? But yeah, you definitely need those breaks in between because otherwise it's completely burnt right out. And
and for that worth, for those that can do that accelerated program, absolute hats off to them. I know several people that have a much busier life than me outside of the textbooks, and they're doing it just fine and excelling in that. So for those that can do it, my applause to them for sure, because just to balance all that out and really just not have a break for 2 years. I mean, that's a lot, but for those that can do it, I mean, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and you're probably wondering why there's like a pink unicorn behind me.
Well, I just figured you maybe you were working on some art in your free time there, Brent.
Yeah, well, these pink unicorns, they kind of make their way around, and there's definitely lots of them are floating around everywhere. So, yeah, yeah, there's a reason behind that, and well, it's because they're not real, really. I mean, they're just imaginary, right? So, but in some cases, some people think they are real, and that's unfortunate, right? Because pink unicorns aren't real, but they're made up for policy wise, just to make them look magical, right?
Yeah, I mean, I still get people asking me, well, what are the pink unicorns, Neil? And so the Coles Notes answer for people that still don't know what pink unicorns are. It's basically discrimination in disguise. It's discrimination personified in the pink unicorn, and we call them pink unicorns because we know pink unicorns don't exist. We know they are a figment of everybody's imagination. They do not exist. They're imaginary, but for whatever reason, our governments all across the country, here in BC and all across the country, like to pretend that they are real, and they invent these pink unicorns for the express purpose of committing discriminatory policies against people with disabilities.
And it has a huge impact on people's livelihoods, their lives. I mean, their health. Because right now, I mean, I'm glad that you're on, because kind of your perspective of it is, right now, like, there's a proposed, and it's been in place, announced, promised, years ago, John, about a Canada disability benefit. Now, I don't dive too much into it because it's a bunch of rhetoric, really. It's promises that are delivered, repackaged, delivered. We promise we're going to gift it out there. But just recently, there was an article in the Tyee in BC.
And we have to say, just sorry, Brent. Yeah, we have to say that they are great. The Tyee is great. They're one of the really strong voices that is always going to bat for people with disabilities, or anything that's like controversial that the government is doing. They're always running stories and going to bat for the little guy, and I think they're a great newspaper publication.
Yeah, and it's just like there's an article out there right now, and it's just saying that, in other words, I'm not going to read word for word, but just to kind of summarize it, it's saying that the current Minister for Social Development and Poverty Reduction is waiting on the regulations to find out if if that income is going to be clawed off a person's income, a recipient receiving disability assistance in the province of British Columbia. So they're not sure yet if they're going to take it away, meaning that it's a federal benefit that's being proposed by the federal government to give to all the provinces and territories across Canada. So they're not sure if they're going to take it off yet, meaning to claw it off you. So here, we're going to give it to you, but we're going to take it away. So you're really not going to benefit from it. And people have been waiting for years for this benefit. And also, then there was nothing in the BC budget this year either for persons with disabilities. As cost of living, skyrocketing up, rents are up, everything's up in an election year. I mean, that's really not a good look in my view. Yeah. It's definitely not a good look. It's like, well, vote for us, but we're going to give you nothing in the budget. But don't worry, maybe there's more to do, right? To me, it's a bunch of rhetoric, and but it hurts people and their health, because people then have to choose very harsh decisions of what they have to do. They cut back on certain areas to sacrifice, right? And from your point of view, John, though, from the health, studying the health, what are you seeing? From your perspective, not my perspective, but your perspective, what are you seeing from outward in?
specifically maybe from a disabled lens, if possible.
Yeah,
What are you
yeah.
saying from a disabled lens?
Yeah, I mean, at this stage in the program, it's tough to give a direct answer to that. I mean, we spent a lot of time, and I'm sure you guys have heard about the social determinants of health.
Mhm.
That's something that's come up
The
a lot, and
Maslow's pyramid or whatever it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Oh,
looking at each
Maslow.
system,
Matt. Oh yeah.
um,
Sorry.
yeah, Maslow's hierarchy
I'm
of
not that. I'm
needs.
not that smart, okay?
But yeah, no, looking at the determinants of health, I mean, that's certainly in the first stage of courses, that was a big focus because you need to look at it from that lens on the outside as you start to look in. So we're just starting to kind of scratch the surface, but
oh.
you know, looking at each system, you know, so you know, from the education system, what's being taught, the literacy, the language, the education and development in that system. Looking at the economic stability part, though, you're looking at the poverty, you're looking at employment, food insecurity, and housing instability. So, I mean, I think that would be really the big thing that I kind of see from the outside looking in, and kind of, you know, being mindful of the news and what's going on. So, like Brent just talked about, the budget and the shelter cost and that, I would, you know, right away I would kind of tie that to the economic stability factor, and how that relates. And obviously we could sit here for hours and decipher rents and whatnot. We know that it's going to be a high number, but when you focus on that sector, though, the economic stability sector, housing is so big. When people are, you know, not even able to afford the place that they're living in, let alone if they're putting 95% of their paycheck to shelter. I mean, you know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that there's not much left over for anything else.
Yeah. And there is a connection between, you know, a safe place to lay your head and enough food security too, and health, right? MJ has his hand up, so we'll go to MJ.
Sure. Thanks, John, on that. Yes.
Well, you know, that's the thing, is you're going back to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you don't have your health, then what do you have? And if you don't have a roof over your head, you know, what do you have? I mean, they've really made this extremely difficult for people to go and get ahead. I mean, you know, when it comes to being disabled and getting healthcare, I mean, a lot of times it's like they look at us as if we're all psychologically broken and need more pills, right? Right, and that's what they do. It's like, oh, here's more pills. Here's more pills. That's not solving the problem. That's
just
masking the
medicate.
problem.
Just medicate the problem away. Yeah,
exactly. You know, and you know, and this is one of the things, the challenges with healthcare, is that they've, you know, when it comes to being disabled, a lot of us have already been dealt with being beaten down and knocked down. And it's like when the doctor just prescribes stuff, it's like you just go and just walk out the door and you take the prescription. You know, and half the time you just take the prescription and you just throw it in the garbage because you're like, you're not listening.
Right?
Yeah.
You know,
sure.
I mean, it's like we're dealing with this situation of, when it comes to being disabled and getting proper health care, it's like it's not really an interest or concerned in the healthcare realm of healthcare. It's like, let's house you and put you into a facility, get you out of the way, right?
Tuck it away, yeah.
And again, John, I know that you are a student nurse at this point, but I'm wondering, have you ever had discussions on? Because I mean, I have the lived experience, so I mean, I'm coming from this from a lived experience point of view. But I'm wondering if you've ever had discussions about the fact that a lot of health things get misdiagnosed potentially because they're disguised by a person's primary disability. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so there's some health conditions, like secondary health conditions, that sometimes are disguised by the person's predominant health condition, like their disability. Have you
That's a good
had
question.
discussions about that, like in your student nursing?
I mean, I haven't at this point, but I think, really getting back to the core basics on how stuff like that could be missed. And again, this is just my perspective
Yeah.
as an individual, but I mean, just going back to those basic healthcare needs. I mean, if you don't have access to a clinic, if you don't have access to a physician, all those sorts of things, my viewpoint is probably that's where it would be missed, is by having those basic needs. You're not connected to a proper level of team or whatnot where you could eliminate missing those things if something was missed in the grand scheme of things. So I mean, because it's pretty common knowledge now. You turn on the news, walk-in clinics are full. People don't have a physician. So if you don't have those things and you're not getting access to, let's say you need some sort of test done or some sort of assessment done, that's probably where those things are going to be missed. And I've had to sit in line at a local clinic lately, just feeling run down and tired, and I mean,
the wait times are crazy. Yeah.
Well, and I mean, especially when you're one of the first in line and they tell you that they're only taking 20 people for the first hour.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's just to get into the doorway. And then you end up waiting, probably at least a couple hours.
Well, the reason I said the thing about the misdiagnosed thing too, because like, again, I have the personal experience. Like my first wife, she passed away from lupus. And of course, lupus is a tricky one anyway, of course. Like lupus is one of those, almost pink unicorn things, that it's really hard to diagnose anyway. But in her case, the reason why it was so difficult to diagnose is because she had so many doctors just telling her, well, it's just your disability, because for example, she was in a wheelchair her whole life, a motorized wheelchair. She had very limited mobility anyway because she had arthrogryposis, which means you have fused joints and all. So her mobility from the get-go, from birth, was very limited. So when she started gaining weight, they're like, well, it's just because you have limited mobility, right? And it was just her existing disability seemed to trump the doctor's ability to kind of dig a little deeper and say, well, maybe there's something else at play here, right?
Yeah, because there's definitely like an ongoing, like John, like you were just talking about, the wait times at the clinics. Like some of my neighbors, I was just talking to just recently, and one of them, just for instance, 4:45 in the morning, they're waiting in the lineup, 4:45 in the morning, and the office, wasn't opening for hours, but the long lineup, they got there and there was already 14 people ahead of that person at 4:45 in the morning.
Yeah.
And then they get there and, oh, I'm sorry, we've already met our quota for the day. So they can't even,
then they just shut the doors.
Yeah, and then they try again the next day, and the person she end up waiting like almost 2 weeks. 2 weeks for a procedure that should have been diagnosed, and now it actually escalated so bad that the person ended up going to the emergency and then had to sit there for like 9 hours before a doctor was able to actually see them and said, well, why didn't you actually have this dealt with sooner? That, so there's a huge problem, and like I say, and that pretty well compromises a person's health, right? And the person that has a disability, which had already other underlying disabilities already, and I always say this on every podcast, like, you're either born with a disability, or you're going to get more disabilities in life, or you're going to acquire a disability of some form,
or they're going to get worse. Yeah.
Or they're going to get worse. And as we all get older, I mean, they're going to be undiagnosed disabilities or hidden disabilities that people don't see. And I mean, I always say being proactive, and I've always been that way in life, is always be proactive. Like, let's fix the problem before it actually gets worse.
Well, and I think that is actually one of the number one things that governments don't give credit to people with disability. Like, I work like hell to make sure that I stay healthy. Like my health is a huge priority for me. I think the government doesn't care because the government's like, well, I'll just go to a food bank and who cares if you have to pay extra for massage, and who cares if you have to pay extra for like chiropractic or whatever it is, right? For me, massage is a big thing, so I pay out of pocket for that all the time, right? And I pay for vitamin supplements all the time because for me, my health is number one priority. And I think the government's like, they don't realize that like people with disabilities, we give a shit about our health. We actually give a shit about our health. Like I'm spending a lot of time and effort and money to maintain my health to the best of my ability. And sometimes you see the government going, who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? You know? Well, I'm telling you that I give a shit about my health. And I know that you give a shit about your health too, Brent.
Yeah.
And we all really care about our health. And the government's like, oh well, you know.
Well, I'm glad that you brought the topic about food banks because you just don't get all the proper food and minerals there at a food bank. And maybe John, you could jump in on that. Your perspective about food banks.
Just before MJ has hand up again, so we'll go to MJ first again.
Okay.
Speaking about health, it's like the other problem we face is when it comes to health, it's like we all know that dental is a key issue that could cause underlying health issues. And then they sit there and they limit the amount of dental care that we can receive, even though we're covered through Blue Cross and they're paying the difference, right? It's like, so when it comes to our health, it's like they deliberately show us they frankly don't give a care about our health because they limit how much we can spend. It's like if you want to go and get your teeth done, or you need to have periodontal work, or you need to have dentures put in, or all the rest of that stuff. I mean, for all I know, in this day and age, they might just pay for half a set of dentures. You know, I mean.
Just like half the wheelchair, right?
Yes,
right.
So the problem is with this, with them limiting the amount of healthcare we can receive as a disabled person, it creates this underlying issues. Like if you don't go and get, if you got rotten teeth in your mouth, that can go and lead to oral cancer, which then go and lead to further other cancers, which then kills you. Right. So if you can't go and get your teeth done, then you end up with these other healthcare problems that go and further down the line. And this is where, when it comes to healthcare, I mean, it really shows us that our governments don't actually care, right? They don't. They just, they say, well, we'll do enough, but you're already disabled anyways. So, you're costing us money, and it doesn't matter if you just, it'll save us money if you actually go and leave the system permanently,
I think back to Jeff Leggett's example when he said, he went to the dentist and he wanted to get something capped, and the government told him, the provincial health that he's on coverage told him, well, that's too expensive. We can have it pulled for you. and Jeff was like, well, I want to try to keep my tooth. And they're like, sorry, it's too expensive. And he's like, well, how about if I pay the difference? How about if I pay the difference? And they're like, sorry, can't be done.
Oh my gosh.
And I mean, that to me is just stupidity, right? Because you're deliberately hamstringing people and saying, we're going to cheap out and say that, you can pull your teeth because we don't really care if you keep your teeth, because it's cheaper for us to just pull it.
Especially if your health is number one. So that's the starting point. And in order to maintain that, the resources need to be on there in order to maintain your health. If you don't have your health now, what do you have? It's preventative.
I do have a question for John. In your schooling and in your training, where do they talk about preventive healthcare and preventive medication, or not medication, but preventive healthcare, to go and say, we got to get people to stop, to go and have things so they don't get as bad, so we're not, further down and having to deal with it? Do they even talk about preventive healthcare in any of this training that you're doing?
Well, you do have that oath, right? That's basically the do no harm oath, right? That
No, that's only for doctors.
Oh, okay. So nurses don't have the same thing. It's only for doctors, eh?
They
Okay.
have a similar one. It's basically more of being moral and ethical is really what it is.
Okay. Anyway, go ahead, John. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure I can pinpoint it to a certain area. I mean, we talk about, again, I'm only about halfway through, so there could be plenty more where you talk about preventative measures or whatnot. But I guess through each kind of training session we go through, we talk about different preventative measures for different things. So it's hard to kind of pinpoint that in one specific area. But I do think that that's definitely a focus, is patient care, patient recovery, and preventative measures for things to get escalated and out of control, right? Because once you start moving up that chain where it's just getting worse and worse, it gets harder and harder to get them back down to that baseline where they were at before.
Yeah.
We have more about giving people a dignified life, right? And live in dignity and in respect, and and making sure that that their health, if that to maintain their health at a level where it's not going to diminish if it's no fault of their own, right? So, and that's what medicine's all about. It's in our healthcare system, it's so fragmented in certain areas, but I mean, it doesn't have to be that way. And I'm just like so proud that John, that you're pursuing this this angle that you're going, because we need more RNs, we need more doctors, and so yeah, it's great.
We have Tara in chat, and she's made a comment, and she says, in Alberta, on support, chiropractic is not covered, but opiates are.
Oh,
so that's her comment. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, right now, like we definitely have such a shortage of nurses and doctors in BC. And I don't know about other provinces, but I'm sure it's probably just as bad. Now, I'm not trying to throw BC under the bus and say, we have the worst healthcare system, but definitely, there's definitely lots that can be changed, and basically bringing in, more people. That, I mean, if they're students, maybe there's ways of escalating it and saying, hey, like let's bring them, let's escalate things and bring them more online, like quicker, and train them while they're they still learn as a student, but actually, and I think maybe that's what do you see on your perspective from that, John? Do you see that maybe they're going to try to pull more of the RNs in quicker rather than completing their whole course? Or
I mean, not that I have direct knowledge to. I mean, you still have a standard that I don't know if that's provincial or federal qualifications that they have to go through. I've only heard more about like the physician side. Like, it sounded like they were doing trying to find ways of attracting more physicians to come to the country or whatnot. And I mean, that was just through hearing it on the news or whatnot. But obviously we know that physicians have a large overhang cost on practices or whatnot. So you're probably seeing a lot more teams pop up where you have 5 physicians kind of sharing the cost of running a practice or whatnot, because then they can just share the staff, the unit clerks, or the medical office assistants or whatnot. It keeps the cost down, and then they're still able to run their practice. But with that comes a pretty hefty price tag as well.
How long? I might get the terminology wrong, but how long is a a practicum at a hospital before an RN like yourself is considered like done, like fully trained or fully certified or whatever the term is.
Good question.
Yeah.
Well, we're in practicum every semester.
Yeah.
From the very beginning, you start in practicum and you kind of just, it all depends on the program, which, say they're focusing on medicine first,
Right.
you're probably going into the medical ward first, or maybe they're talking about, I think quite often they usually speak about seniors and dementia and that kind of stuff, because usually you would start off in long-term care and kind of get that intro to healthcare or whatnot. It's very advanced and complex, but at the same time, it's slowed down a bit where you can kind of get your feet wet with experience, and then kind of as you proceed, then you'll go through other stages. But no, to answer your question, you're in practicum the whole term, or the whole 4 years, but that's a combination of classroom work and then practical work as well. It doesn't mean that you're doing practicum 5 days a week, though. Usually,
Yeah.
2 to 3. I mean, it would totally depend on the university.
They just gradually ramp up the practicum time versus the class time. Like, does it gradually go up and up and up as you get further
it's
to
actually
the end?
it's actually about the same, but your last semester is preceptorship, so you're only doing practicum.
Oh,
you are
okay.
basically working as a full-time nurse. You're still under the hospital or whatever site you're at, guidance or whatnot, but you are performing the tasks as basically a full nurse or whatnot, under supervision. So you would take a full patient load, but I mean that's really where you're getting your key experience, is that practical side. I mean, that you can sit and look at textbooks and look at all the what could happens, but I mean, really, it's the real world where those things, where it's really going to test your experience, test your knowledge, and test how are you going to react in that moment.
All hands on deck. Yeah.
MJ, you have your hand up again.
Yeah, I mean, it's like my mom worked as an LPN, so I'm fairly familiar with the healthcare system from that point of long-term care. And over the years, it's like there's certain things, like, for example, way back when it was only like RNs that would be handing out medication. Now they've put that down to LPNs, and they've gone further all the way down to care aides, to where if like they just need a prescription, they take the prescription handing course or whatever it is to be able to hand out the pills. So now we've gotten all the way down to care aides handing out medication. And, in all of these changes, what we've seen is there's been a lot more, errors happen in the field, because it's like care aides are now the last line defense. They're also the ones that have to go and help, like, change the, like, if they're dealing with old people, they got to help change them, bathe them, and all the rest of the stuff, and give them medication. So they're, they've moved this. So it's like LPNs and care aides are not doing as much work, but all the work is being lowered all the way down to the care aides. And then they're going and making it so that the care aides are the ones that are actually doing all the major work in care homes, right? You only need to go back to an LPN or care aide really when it's something that's not inside your scope, of practice, right? So there's a lot of things that have changed over the years, and right now BC is also looking for RPNs, registered practical nurses, instead of like RNs, and RPNs are able to go and like renew prescriptions and things like that in doctors' offices, which alleviates the doctor from having to deal with renewing prescriptions. So the system's slowly evolving, but it's just taking forever to get there, right? I mean, in Ontario, they had RPNs for the past 5 or 10 years, but we're just starting to bring them in over in BC in the last 3 to 5 years. Yeah.
Well, my mom was an RN as well, and going back a long time, like we're talking like early 70s, to like to the 80s or something, right? And back then an RN did absolutely everything. She tells stories of like she was cleaning up puke and lifting 400-pound patients and all and without ceiling track lifts and all that, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, so at that time, the burden on the RNs was like massive. Like they were literally doing everything, right? And so now we have this more of a tiered system of like you said, there's the carrieds that are doing the lower like I said, doing things like the cleaning up the puke and stuff like that,
Yeah.
or doing weight transfers and things like that.
And weight bathing and all the rest is
Yeah, and bathing and stuff like that. But yeah, so it's changed a lot, because like I said, I mean, I remember hearing all kinds of stories that my mom would say, and she was doing it was like a chief cook and bottle washer type of job before, where just did everything.
My aunt was an RN, and she made her way up from since she was really really young. She's now retired, but she made her way up to a like a specialized nurse. Because there's different departments that you can go into, and there was dialysis. She had made her way into that area. And I tell you, like the workload, and it was huge, but she said it was very rewarding. Because so many stories that she would hear, John. Like I can just imagine. I mean, over time, eh? And seeing people coming and going, right? But it's a rewarding career, and you're definitely on the right path of that. Because I mean, we need so many RNs out there, and I mean, what are you hearing in like um, some of the practicums, like I mean, like the workload. I mean, I guess kind of what MJ's been mentioning too. Like, are they like passing it kind of on, like, or like, are they dividing things up more, or?
Yeah, I mean, just going back to that, I think I was just trying to backtrack there. I think MJ means nurse practitioners is something that's really come to BC.
Yes. Yes.
To be able to do the prescriptions and that. Now, as far as carrieds doing the meds, I do know that exists, but I think, to my knowledge in BC, that's probably seen more in private care.
Okay.
Because I have not seen that at a hospital level, but I have heard of that existing through previous sites that I've attended or whatnot. But with that, I mean, really, that's on the whoever's running that facility. That's on their license at the end of the day. So I imagine with something like that, there would be vigorous training so that a medication error would never happen. Because once you're, passing those tasks downwards, shall we say, you have to be sure that there's not a mistake being made, because it would be held against someone. So if you did see that in facility, to my understanding anyways, that would be on the private care level.
Having steps in the way, and the kind of guidelines along the way, so that there's no mishaps.
Yeah, I mean, I know back in the day when I finished the carried certificate, when I had worked at an assisted living building, and Brent, you know where I'm talking about there, but it was exactly that protocol. I actually didn't do that course at the time, but I do know that there were carrieds that were able to do that. But at the end of the day, that fell under the nurse who ran the building. It would be held against their license.
Oh wow!
But I do know that there were never mistakes, because that person was on top of training, and it was pretty top notch.
Yes.
I mean, as far as workload, I mean, it's no secret we're short staffed, right? I mean, but it's everywhere. It's everywhere. Yes. It's at the gas station. It's at Tim Hortons. It's at A&W. It's everywhere. But healthcare is no exception. I hope within my career, eventually it'll get back on track. I mean, there's a big wave of people still retiring, the baby boomers, whatnot. You're still seeing that even after COVID. And it was my understanding through conversations through COVID that even though you did lose some people that decided to retire after COVID or during whatever the reasons were,
Right.
that there was actually still a big wave of people that were coming through retirement or whatnot, and probably just still in the midst of going through it. So, and then you'll much like everything, you'll probably have a big lull period there where start to catch our breath or whatnot. But yeah,
I have visions that it's going to be kind of like a Walmart. When you have that disembodied voice that says, "Please go to checkout 4. Please go to checkout 6. Please go to checkout 8." And I can see like hospital queues kind of being the same thing. Please go to all this kind of stuff.
I mean, one of the things I thought when attending school was, okay, I need to make sure it's a career that can't be taken over by a robot. And as crazy as the technology is out there, I still think the human aspect is needed in nursing. However, I mean, as we have studied, I mean, we've seen videos and things that they've done with robotics that are really cool. There's this one where it was this one guy that was recovering through stroke and had paralysis in his hand, and they were using virtual reality. So he had the big goggles on, and it was just the sight of mimicking his hand motion, which he had a lot of pain in, that he started to be able to do the motions again.
Yeah,
it was really neat. It was a documentary based somewhere in the States, but so we're definitely seeing some cool things. Actually, that movie was actually a few years old too. I mean, this wasn't 2024. I want to say it was probably 2020-ish.
I saw about a month ago. About a month ago, they had this is in BC here too. They had there's these 2 robots that can do blood screening, very very kind of advanced blood screening. Just these 2 robots do all the screening by themselves, and they can diagnose kind of very kind of baseline blood disorders. And so you don't have like humans that are looking at it. You have these robots that are looking at it and say, "Oh, this person's screened for this. This person's screened for this." Yeah, it's like amazing.
Check out number 2 to John. He's like, right away. Yeah, the robot would direct you over to a show person, and I always say on that line, I always say yes.
Well, until we have the med beds, until we have the med beds for Elysium, like in the movie Elysium, where we're still gonna need human beings and technology and all the rest of this stuff. And as much as technology is great, as John said, that human element, that human decisive thinking of, because a machine can only do so much with what it knows and what it's been trained in the medical technology before it can get to that position to go and say, yeah, I can make a definitive diagnosis, right? And under a human eye, it could see something that the machine could miss or would discount as not important, right?
Yeah.
And that's where the human touch in medical care, in my opinion, is still very important.
Well, even at a grocery level, even in a grocery store, I mean, human beings need human connection. If we don't have human connection, we become less human. So like if I'm not going out of the house and meeting you, Brent, and meeting my grocery clerk that's bagging my groceries or going to the bank and talking to the tellers, and I mean, I'm going to become less and less human, right? So that human connection is so important. And of course, like when you get up to a higher, a higher level, like a doctor or a nurse, I mean, that human connection is even more important, right? But I mean, this idea from CEOs now that they can say, well, why do we need to hire more checkout people when we can get an automated something to do it. But the more we get away from that, the less human we become, right? There's less human interaction, so we will become robots ourselves. So we'll become humanoid robots.
Yeah, exactly.
And you'll say to me, Neil, can we do it? Can we do a podcast? And I'll say, sorry, Brent, I cannot do that.
I do not understand that.
I do not compute.
Well,
data. There we are.
I mean, with Neuralink, I mean, that's they're talking about with Neuralink, right?
That's scary stuff. Yeah.
Now, here's the thing: is if we go plus 10 years to where, for example, you could learn, I'm just going to use the term osmosis for ease of use for the conversation, is you could go and upload all your medical texts, that you need to learn into your brain, and it just goes and drips it into your brain with osmosis, as it were. That still doesn't go and give you the practical experience and the hands-on experience. Sure, it could give you a vivid dream of you going and doing it, or whatever, but that still doesn't give you that doesn't give you the hands-on experience of being able to see something, make a decision, and elucidate in your mind to make the decision best in that current circumstance.
I always say, it's like kind of like showing you the documents, like it's like closer, like bringing it closer or something like it.
Right.
Like hands-on, yeah. Closer,
but you still need, in my opinion, you're still going to need that hands-on decision making, because human beings can make a decision that a computer will always discount, right? They'll look at it from a binary point of view and say, well, this information is not important. But a human being goes, well, wait a minute, this could be the underlying condition that the computer missed, right?
Yeah.
Your thoughts, John?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the whole Neuralink thing, I'm not too savvy in that area. I just try and I tackle my studies one at a time, and that's a whole nother thing there, how all that works. But yeah, it's definitely very complex, and I don't know how that's going to go in the future. I mean, it's kind of scary to look at, but
yeah. Just having your credentials all kind of lined up, right? I mean, having maybe data from Star Trek, having to compute that, right?
Yeah.
Well, the idea though too, I mean, this is the scary thing about the Neuralink stuff, is like, not only is the computer in your body making things and saying, yes, move your hand or something, right? It's not only that, it goes one step further in the sense that you can actually have a second operator, like you example, Brent. You could be sitting at a keyboard and issue a command at a keyboard and say, move hand. Right. And then I will move my hand. So you have a second operator outside of my body now, issuing a command and saying, move hand, and I'll do it. And that is scary shit.
That's like a like almost like a neuropathy, John. Would that be kind of like your nerves, right? That would send like a command.
Well, yeah, that's. I mean, I guess that kind of relates to that video that I was mentioning that we saw there on this stroke patient recovering their movement, was actually seeing the motion, and then they were starting to be able to do it. So it was by connecting those dots that it had been missing. This limb had been paralyzed from the stroke for some time, but they were working on recovery. So through the VR goggles, they were able to see simple motions like putting the arm in front, opening the door. Like they had the I don't know what you call them. Like they're like these handheld kind of controllers or whatnot, where you would kind of emulate the motion of opening the door or whatnot. So it's by connecting those dots that the brain was missing, this patient was able to regain kind of that motion and movement in that arm that had been paralyzed from the stroke.
Kind of like a handheld, one of those consoles, or like a game consoles, or it's like
it's just basically like I guess it's no different than like a handle, except it doesn't say sleepy on it. Oh, I kind of cut off there. Yeah. But no, it is basically like the handle, and then it's got kind of a round piece that connects to it, and I guess with that remote or whatnot, obviously it's got
but I guess that's
that kind of emulates.
I guess that's the difference though, is like in that case of the stroke victim, you're dealing with you're tapping into the person's existing brain function, right? Whereas this neural link thing is literally like a operating system where you're issuing things from the base of a secondary operating system or a secondary user interface and issuing commands. So that's a little bit different.
Well,
yeah,
right. I mean, if we get back, so when it comes to all the training that you've done so far, what have you found? What have you found in when it comes to more the level of advancement of like technology or whatever that has been brought forth into the training programs that you'll be learning how to use at a later date once you graduate?
Good question.
I mean, it's tough to say at this point, just because, I mean, to me, as a newcomer, everything's so new to me. I guess I guess more through conversations through veteran health employees or whatnot. They kind of let us know on which system is dated and what has worked well and what hasn't. I mean, certainly seeing a lot of improvements with mobility aids. I actually have a couple friends that one in particular that has his own physiotherapy company, and he uses a lot of the kind of new age technology. He's kind of looking for new ideas on how to help the patient recover from whatever they have. I think he kind of specializes more in stroke and CVA recovery or whatnot. But you see a lot of programs being done through aquatics in the water. But there's different styles of physiotherapy too, right? Some prefer the the traditional way, which is actually using your hands or whatnot, whereas others use more equipment and different things, different pieces of machinery and exercise material or whatnot. So I mean, that's kind of where I'm at as far as like seeing the technology that's used. I mean, it's really tough to say at this point, just because everything is so foreign to me and new or whatnot. But with time ticking and whatnot, I'm sure they'll continue to look at more advancements or whatnot. Everything's so computer heavy, so integrating their systems to kind of talk to each other on the same level, where as always or as it kind of goes, sometimes they don't always communicate on the same level. It's about I guess trying to find ways to tether them together so that discrepancies aren't being had.
With technology changing so rapidly, right? Even within the healthcare sector, I mean, it's just learning new things as you're going along, and they say, oh well, yeah, we learned that already, but yeah, that's good information, but now there's more new stuff to learn. Now you need to kind of incorporate the new stuff in as you're going on. It's so fascinating, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, that's one of my questions was going to be is
must be reading your mind.
Yeah, is like when you get out into a hospital, and let's say, you've been a nurse already for 4 or 5 years. Is it a mandated thing at the hospitals to always be offering continual training? Like, do you always have to maintain like courses on the side or something like that if something is new in the field? Like, do they kind of mandate ongoing curriculum or what?
For sure. Yeah. The training does not stop once you graduate. I mean, there's always in-house training. There may be external training you have to attend. I mean, even you take someone that goes on maternity leave, probably their first month coming back after a year or year and a half.
Right.
Maybe a month is a little high, but I'll say up to a month. They could be doing training sessions that they missed in the last year. I mean, everything is just constant education or whatnot. There's always, you can imagine how many, as healthcare workers, how many policy changes there were during COVID.
That's true.
Every day it was just like a Rolodex of things going on. So yeah, no, the training is constant throughout your career. It's
always keeping updated.
There's always something that's going to come up that you need. And I mean, it's just, it can range from simple things to complex things. It could be, hand hygiene seminar versus, something totally, much more advanced, some sort of new system being implemented or whatnot.
Yeah, I can imagine just keeping up with all the new information as you're going along, and you say in-house training and just all hands on, like it's more training, even someone showing you more new techniques, and yeah, it's fascinating.
We've reached the top of the hour already, Brent. So it's time for closing comments already.
Yeah, well, absolutely. There's so much to learn, John, as through your journey, being a student, and this is great. I mean, great knowledge, great experience for you. I mean, especially the hands-on, right? I mean, going through your practicums, and just learning as I guess from others, and hearing from others of what you're needing to learn in the healthcare setting, and all the experiences that you're going through, and coming on here as an ally, for persons with disabilities. It's so important to, hear your perspective, and I want to thank you so much for doing this. Definitely, there'll be other opportunities for sure. For you to come on, and maybe some other show of, maybe if it's something related to healthcare, or maybe it's mobility. Like I might be doing a series about other mobility stuff too, and that way I can have you come on, and we can connect on that part of it, from the mobility sector. Or if you think of anything else within the healthcare sector, I can do a series on that, and we can really target on something like that too. And because it's never ending, like it's always learning from different perspectives on different series that I'm doing, and I think it's so rewarding on so many angles. And so I want to thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, and thanks for MJ for coming on too.
MJ is always awesome.
Well, I do have another question for John. You started off as a carry. Did you go and jump up to being an LPN, or did you go from being a carry to taking the RN training?
Yeah, no, I didn't. When I was looking at the two, I was comparing, and I mean, I hope I made the right decision. But no, I guess at the time I just figured, you know what, 2.5 years versus 4 years. Let's just get it done, right?
Yeah.
It's in a situation where I'm able to do that, and I think at the end of the day, I'd be happy with either. But no, I decided that it was.
Probably
the 4 year.
Probably the pay is better, and probably your flexibility on job choices is probably better too, right?
You could work. With an RN, you can practically work anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, you can run a facility once you've taken facilities training, or you could go and work in the ER. Or you could work in an OR, right? So
Yeah.
you've got a lot more flexibility with what you can do with being an RN.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of the areas would be specialized training. So the OR and intensive care unit and obviously maternities and peds would be specialty areas that you would actually need more schooling for. But to my understanding, quite often you can get sponsored or get paid training.
Oh, really?
To get that
Oh,
done. Some places, I don't know about all, but I have heard of that. So there's some incentive there. I mean, those are specialty areas that, I mean, you think an area like ICU, you can't be short staffed there.
No.
You need to
Right.
be properly staffed at all times, around the clock, sort of thing. So
Well, always lots of opportunities to expand, and that's never ending learning, right? It's that learning. It keeps going and going. It's like the time change, right? As it keeps on going, the clock just keeps on going. Yeah, that's yeah. Now we skipped forward an hour, and so and that affects the health too, eh? In different ways, and you lose an hour,
Well,
but maybe gain an hour, but yeah, I don't know.
well, quickly on the time change thing,
Yeah.
studies have shown that people actually have more heart attacks, strokes, and other healthcare issues within the first week after going and springing forward. Right.
Oh wow.
Right. They've actually done studies on this. So I mean, so that just jumping off of that, but when it comes to all of this, I mean, the amount of healthcare professionals we need is going to climb for the next 5, 10, 15 years, and then it's going to be drastically reduced after the baby boomers start to slide away, and that's just going to be the way it is. So we're going to end up with an abundance of healthcare providers, in the next 15 to 20 years. And then what then? Right. And that doesn't include technology. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
here's my question is, if in 10, 15 years, we find that, we don't need as many RNs, or we don't need as many of this. What's your backup plan? Do you have a plan or are you just going to write it until then and then see where it goes?
I mean, could I retire in 10 to 15 years? I think if I answer that question today, it's probably a hard no. So I guess I just have to count on the whole anti-robotics thing, where I still would be needed. No, I mean, obviously you'd make adjustments on the fly or whatnot, but yeah, it's tough to say.
I'll make sure
to say how it's going to look, right?
I'll make sure I kill all the robots along with all the pink unicorns. No pink unicorns and no robots. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just have to just get an actual doctor that will come along and take care of all the pink unicorns.
That's right.
I can think of one doctor.
Euthanize all the pink unicorns. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But anyway, with all
as long
that
as it's not Dr. Hannibal Lecter.
Yes.
or Nurse Ratchet.
There you go. Yeah.
Show me your credentials, please. Thanks everyone for tuning in today.
Thanks everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.